Hello, happy people. I hope you're having just a great day today. Today we're taking a look at H.G. Wells and his novel, The War of the Worlds. It was published in 1897. It was serialized in a magazine, which was common at that time for a lot of big novelists and people. Some of the biggest novelists of the era regularly serialized their things in magazines, pulps, newspapers, and that sort of thing. And they would regularly end on cliffhangers, which would make you want to go and encourage you to buy the next volume of this serial. So it was serialized for you there. This copy is of The War of the Worlds. I picked up when I was in junior high at a book sale, at one of those book sales that they have with these like traveling book sales that go to different like schools and so forth. And I was in junior high and they came to my school for a couple of days, a book fair, and I purchased it there with my $20 a month, my salary that I got from my dad, and it was a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed it. And I read it then and there when I was in junior high, and I haven't read this novel since. And I figured, I think it'd be a fun challenge. I don't remember that much of it because it was such a long time ago. I'm 45 now. I probably read this when I was like 12 or 13 or 14. Wanted to go back and reread War of the Worlds for the first time as an adult, and get a chance to re-feel the novel, get another feel of it. I don't remember too much of the stuff, just really, just a couple of the key plot points, and that sort of thing. And one of the key comparisons that I'm going to be making for you today is a story that I've already reviewed for you in the invasion genre that kicked it off. It's the first. It's considered by many to be the first military science fiction short story. It predates The War of the Worlds. It's set in the future. It preordains the Germans getting a technological advance and then invading England and kicking England's butt because England's major naval powers are away in their colonial considerations and conquests, and their armies, their home guards, are regularly involved in things like Irish disputes and Irish revolutions and revolts and those sorts of things. So they aren't as well positioned as a home guard defense could be. It's written by Chesney, the Battle at Dorking. And it's a lot of fun, and I'll link you to it in the comments below. After I read it, I said, this really influenced H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds. After rereading H.G. War of the Worlds, I could not see the influences more. They have very similar plot structures. They have very similar points to make. They have very similar things in mind when it comes to their targets. The battle was a very, very popular thing. It was written, published, serialized, then it was published as a pamphlet. It's a shorter novel, probably more like a novella in modern terms. It's one of the first reviews I actually did for you. I love this thing so much. It's the first military science fiction story ever, and it's a key military. It really brought about this sort of invasion story that started to come about. Germans were very popular after France signed a treaty with Russia. France invasion stories took over as the key sort of thing. And so H.G. Wells is writing The War of the Worlds into this key zeitgeist. There are more key novels that are written during this era of the home guard, of the British being invaded by another European. But what Wells does is he takes this and he spins it into an alien invasion story instead, which I think is really key because it takes a lot of the sort of European politics and military aspects and so forth and changes the key concepts. And this is an incredibly anti-imperialistic look at the British Empire and the questioning of imperialism, and it was done at the height of the British Empire. So this is, particularly by a British person, by a middle-class British person, who's a writer, and who definitely knows the mores and values of his day, and the pride that Brits felt for their empire, and the prestige they felt, and so forth. And a lot of their invasions of the people around them were because they were successful because they were technologically superior. And in one place he points out the and this is on one of the first couple of pages of the novel, he points out that we had killed like all of the locals and natives in a lot of places that we invaded as a part of our colonial building and empire building. So are we such servants of mercy that we can complain if we were treated the same way by these native Martians that had a much higher superior technology to us, and were also looking for a place to colonize and grow and develop their own race? We can't. The idea is that we can't complain about this key concept and that sort of thing that's happening from this. I'm giving this a 9 out of 10. It's incredibly well done, incredibly well written. It's also not that long. It's only 200 pages long. It took me about 6 hours for me to read it. I started it a long time ago, actually. The Monday before Thanksgiving. And the Monday before Thanksgiving, because it was at Monday Night Football, I only read 20 pages. My goal is to do 40 pages a day and to knock it out in 5 days. The first one was about half an hour for me to knock out 20 pages or so, maybe more like 35 minutes. And I did it before the game started on Monday Night Football. I figured that'd be fun. And then on Tuesday before Thanksgiving, I said, oh, this is nice. I'm going to knock out 40 pages today and thus kind of get back into the scheme of things that I was planning. Good stuff. On Wednesday, I was flying home for Thanksgiving, and I figured I'm going to read it in the plane, knock out 40 pages in the plane at least, maybe more, and then I can knock it out some at night because my family goes home. My family that lives back home in West Virginia, in Point Pleasant, they regularly go to bed early, so I can probably knock out 40 pages a night on Wednesday night, on Thursday and Friday, knock it out on Friday. Maybe knock out the last 20 pages while I'm traveling and that sort of a thing. And so my goal was to knock it off and finish it by Friday. But I didn't read at all in the plane. I just watched Doctor Who stuff online on my laptop or in the airports. And then I didn't read it that night either. I was just so invested and so forth. And I was tired from traveling. And then the next day I pushed it off. And the next day I pushed it off. And I pushed it off through Saturday. I pushed it off through Sunday, which when I flew back. And again, I had lots of times. And on my way back, I was like, I need to knock this off. So I got back from flying on that Sunday after Thanksgiving. I said, I am going to sit down and spend some time and knock it off. And I dedicated myself to really finishing this quickly. So I knocked out 50 pages, 1/4 of the novel. It's like an hour and a half of sitting and reading. And I knocked it out, and then I did 50 pages the next night, that Monday. Then I finished the last 40 pages on Tuesday. And so I finished it. And now I'm recording this on Wednesday after Thanksgiving. So it's about a week after Thanksgiving. It's been about 8 or 9 days after I started reading it. I just finished it last night for the second time. So I was not as quick with this novel as I normally am with my stuff, and I apologize. I apparently decided to take a break during Thanksgiving. I didn't even know it. So that's weird, but hey, it is what you say it is. I am going to look at The Time Machine next in my queue, which I also read when I was in junior high and haven't read since as an adult. So I'm going to stay with this early or heavily influential science fiction themes and that sort of thing. I'm also probably going to watch, now that I'm in the mood, the 1950s movie of The War of the Worlds, because it was not that similar to this one. There are things that are in that film that are not mentioned in here at all, like flying machines, that you don't get to and spaceships. So I'll go and take a look at it and see. I haven't watched it in probably decades. I'll probably watch it again too. I'll try to find it somewhere on streaming service. I think The War of the Worlds has passed its copyright date since it was published in 1897. So I'll try to link to you below a copy of the book on Amazon so you can buy it. If you're like me and you like to read things in print and you don't own a copy. Or I will also link you to a free version online. My guess is that it's on Project Gutenberg somewhere. But if not, I'll find it somewhere else. This is definitely something that should be available now and should be free. For you to own. If you don't want to spend the money or don't have the money or you're heavily budgeted, no problems, no judgment. Read it however you want to read it. This is a judgment-free zone. But anyway, I really enjoyed rereading this novel as an adult and coming back to it and seeing some of the ideas of H.G. Wells. Now, for those of you who are new to the channel, because you're coming to this from War of the Worlds and you're just reading big stuff, my channel takes a deep dive into a lot of the lesser known things and lesser known works by a lot of the authors that are out there in the genres of science fiction like this one, fantasy, and horror. So I have done a deep dive into H.G. Wells' stuff, particularly his science fiction short stories that have been written. I actually have a collection of H.G. Wells' all of his short stories that include a lot of them in science fiction. So I've actually already read a lot of H.G. Wells stuff for this channel. But I tend to leave the bigger stuff from these authors. For example, I've done The Bottle Imp by Robert Louis Stevenson, which is my favorite short story that he wrote, but I haven't done his bigger stuff like, Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, even though that is a key thing in horror genre, right? And I'm probably sure at some point in time I will. Although, again, I haven't read it since I was in junior high or high school, maybe ninth grade in high school, now that I think about it. So I probably will at some time, but it's not my cue, and I haven't read it since then. But again, I typically don't do the big stuff in authors' names. I tend to do some of the lesser known stuff that people might not have been read or be familiar with, that's just as good or sometimes even better. But H.G. Wells is a really interesting stuff because his stuff is really written for the masses. In that way, he's a lot like Shakespeare. Shakespeare didn't write for the nobles and the elite with this high-level voice. He was writing in the voice of the people, that high English that we see today. That was the voice of the common man. The common people were coming to his theaters. He was writing. He wasn't creating all this brand new stuff. He was just retelling stories, retelling plays, retelling translations of things that were published in other languages. Like one of the stories came from an Italian translation from an Italian thing, Romeo and Juliet. So he was writing for the common folk. And in a very similar way, so is H.G. Wells, who's also an English writer, with a lot of power and impact. And I think it's interesting because when you go back and read his stuff, as a major person, his use of language, his use of imagery, his use of verbs in order to show action are all very, very nicely done. This is, again, definitely a 9 out of 10. He's definitely hitting this on all pages. Now, I'm not going to... Normally what I do when I do a review of a novel is I give you a synopsis, the first couple of chapters, but I'm sure that you're familiar with The War of the Worlds. If maybe you've read the novel, and therefore you have some stuff to talk about, and if not, I'm sure you're still familiar with it. You're going to know the basic plot structure, right? You might be somebody who watched, like, the Tom Cruise, Steven Spielberg team up for War of the Worlds in 2005, or you might be somebody who's, checking out some of the older stuff, or you may be somebody who's read this novel and is looking for reviews now. Or somebody who subscribed to the channel, you're like, oh, I'm glad that Abe finally did a big name work by H.G. Wells. Whatever, it's fine. There's no issues here. But have you read War of the Worlds? If so, what'd you think about it? Did you agree or disagree with my thoughts in any way, shape, or form? If so, I would be more than happy to engage you with it further in the comments below, whatever your take is on this piece or my review thereof. If you enjoyed this video, please feel encouraged to hit that subscribe button, because there'll be a lot more of these to follow in days, weeks, months, and years to come. And then finally, I want to thank you so very much for taking some time out of your day and investing it in watching my video, because we all have so many things that are happening in our lives, and we're pulled in so many different directions. So the fact that you spent this time with me is incredibly humbling, and I appreciate it. So thanks again, and have an amazing day.